Welcome back to the EFA podcast. We're back after a week hiatus. Yeah, I'm here with Matthias as always.
Hello.
Um, last week there was something happened with the recording, so we couldn't upload it. But we're hopefully we're back and we can get those fixed so we can get this one out. So if you're listening to it, then you know that obviously did happen. We're gonna start with some headlines. Carson Wentz has been benched for Jalen Hurts, which I think we kind of all expected. Aaron Rodgers has become the fastest player to 400 passing touchdowns, which I think it just kind of shows that he's up there and he deserves to be in the GOAT talk. The Saints and Chiefs both clinched the playoffs as the Vikings moved up to 7 in the NFC, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. And the Steelers let the undefeated season slip away, as we know, to the Washington football team on Monday night, I guess, 23-17. And yeah, if you want to talk about any of those, then you can go ahead.
Yeah, it was definitely a long time coming for him to get benched. I mean, Hurts he looked pretty decent from what I saw from his start, and they're just not winning with Wentz. So, and then Rodgers is one of the most skilled throwers of the football, and I think that just shows it. And yeah, the Steelers losing in that fashion. I mean, I didn't expect them to go undefeated for the whole season, but I really didn't think it was gonna. I didn't think it was gonna happen this week.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think they would have gone undefeated anyway. But considering the next 4 weeks are pretty tough, I know they have the Colts and Bills, I believe, mixed in there, and yeah, for them to lose the Washington football team, that's kind of like a kick in the ass. Like they needed that, and I mean, if you're a Steelers fan, you hope that Mike Tomlin can kind of get something going for the next 4 weeks and not end up 11-5. So, yeah. All right. So today we're gonna do top 3 players this time instead of top 5. We got our picks for week 14, and then we're each gonna give each other a few questions, and then we got a Super Bowl prediction before, and that's gonna be our last one before playoffs happen. So, Matthias, if you want to start with number 3 for the top 3 players.
All right, so at 3 I have Darren Waller, who had 13 receptions, 200 yards, and 2 touchdowns. I think with Kittle out, he's really been like the second best tight end this season behind, obviously, Kelsey, who I think is having one of the best tight end seasons of all time, probably, just from a yardage perspective. And yeah, I think that last year he was pretty underrated, but this year he's really broken out again on the improved Vegas offense, and obviously that stat line is fantastic. And he had a great game, so.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, that's a great week, and especially for a tight end. Like, you don't see 200 yards often, and for him to do it at the tight end position, that's a big deal. My 3 is Baker Mayfield, who went 25 of 33, 334 yards, and 4 touchdowns. And I don't know about you, but he kind of proved to me that he can be a starting caliber QB, and I've had doubts in the past, especially this year. But he played great, especially in that first half. I think he had all 4 touchdowns in the first half, and it shocked me that they beat the Titans by what was gonna be a tremendous amount. Tennessee ended up coming back and holding it to within 6, but I still think Tennessee's the better team. But I think Baker definitely proved to me that he can be a good quarterback in years to come.
Yeah. I agree. He had like a similar week earlier this year where he was playing fantastic.
Yeah, that was the Bengals, right? That was the week because he started out looking like it was going to be one of his career worst games because he went 0 for 5 and with an interception in the first quarter or something.
Oh yeah, I remember that. And then he went on to have like 5 touchdowns or something like that.
Something like that.
Yeah, well, this is a career game, obviously. I think that he's definitely taken the jump this year. And I also just want to say it's kind of weird that he's playing so much better without OBJ on the field. I feel like that might have something to do with him forcing the ball to OBJ when he is on the field.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Are you gonna do your two or what? You didn't say two.
Yeah, so my two is also Baker Mayfield. He had the 147 rating. And yeah, he had a great game against Tennessee. I mean, their defense has shown, I guess, right now that they're far from elite. They have no pass rush at all. But still, 4 touchdowns, 147 passer rating. That's impressive against anyone. So,
Yeah, mine too is Josh Allen. He went 32 for 40 and 375 yards and 4 touchdowns, and it was a very similar stat line to Baker. And I have him at two because he did it better, like in the sense he had more completions, more yards, had the same amount of touchdowns. But against San Fran, I think Josh Allen played like his MVP caliber self. They needed the win if they wanted to inch closer to clinching that AFC East spot, and Josh Allen showed that Josh Allen kind of led the team and said in his play that we need to win this game. We're not that far ahead of Miami, who also won this week, and he played very well. So I have him at two.
yeah, Josh Allen is my one. I agree that it's a similar stat line to Mayfield, but with more yards, basically, and against depending on who you ask, I guess, a better defense than the 49ers. Obviously, the 49ers defense is better when healthy, but it's not, Nick Bosa is out, and he's over the past couple of weeks, he's looked more like what we saw in the first couple of weeks. He obviously had that slump, but I think he's really been playing much better. And now this time, I think the defense has picked up their game as well when they weren't doing super well in the beginning of the year. And they're just generally playing like contenders. They're competing in good games, and yeah.
Yeah, my number one is we have a very similar top three. My one is Darren Waller. We've already talked about him a little bit, so I'm not going to say much. We mentioned the stat line: 13 catches, 200 yards, touchdowns. If it wasn't for him, the Raiders would be the laughing stock of the NFL right now. And they still really almost were. It wasn't for Greg Williams' awful defensive play calling, then they probably would have lost that game. But like I mentioned earlier when you were talking about him, I said 200 yards is impressive. Like, it's impressive, but for him to put it up, but he's a tight end. For him to put it up as a tight end is a lot more impressive than a wide receiver. And I can't really speak for you, but I think you said it when you were talking about him too. But he's probably cemented himself as a top 2 tight end right now. Now that Kittle's out, but this week he kind of showed that he deserves to be in the top 3 conversation for when Kittle's back and healthy. So I think Darren Waller to pretty much lead the Raiders to a win. That's why I have him at 1.
Yeah, he obviously played fantastic, and it's a great stat line for a tight end.
Yeah. All right, so that pretty much wraps up the um, week 13 review, I guess. We can start looking ahead to week 14. Matthias, you start with the picks in Thursday Night Football.
Yeah, so Thursday night the Patriots play the Rams. I have the Rams winning. I just think that right now, the Patriots are on a little bit of a hot streak, but the Rams they're also playing really fantastic as of late, and their defense has been very good. Obviously, led by Aaron Donald and Jalen Ramsey, and I I just think that if it comes down to like the offense, I trust the Rams a little bit more, and it comes down to the defense, I still trust the Rams a little bit more, just because of the personnel they have on the field and just overall talent level. And although I do think it'll be a competitive, close game, I trust the Rams to push through and, in the end, be on top.
Yeah. I also have the Rams, and I think in the 6 weeks we've actually done this as a Patriots fan. I think I've only picked them once, which is kind of upsetting to me. But um, if you look at technically, this is more of a home game for New England than it is LA because they just played in LA. That stadium, there's no fans, and the Rams were in Arizona, I believe. So that I mean, should that play a factor? Maybe, but I don't really know. The Rams are first in passing defense, and they're playing. If you could argue that the Patriots are the worst passing offense in the league, and I think it'll be a pretty defensive game, similar to Super Bowl 53 a few years ago, and yeah, I think it will be similar to the Super Bowl a few years ago, but I think there'll be more points put on the board. Um, I think, I think Sean McVay will come up with the win in the rematch. And then one more thing I like to add is like you kind of mentioned that New England's on the hot streak, and this is kind of the game they would lose. Like they tend to get your hopes up that they're going to make the playoffs, and then they lose a game that they probably should have won, or in this case, I think they should lose anyway. But who knows? They surprised me multiple times this year with playing the Chiefs pretty close with Brian Hoyer, and then beating the Ravens a few weeks ago. So who knows what can happen? I'm gonna be safe, and I'm gonna take the Rams though.
Yeah, yeah. Well, next there's Denver versus Carolina, and I have Denver. I feel like Carolina this year has really been one of those teams that I can just never really, I just never really know how to pick for them because some weeks their Teddy Bridgewater leads what looks like a top 10 passing offense, or yeah, and some weeks, he just looks very, kind of like, I understand why he's been a backup for so long. And Christian McCaffrey is back, but I just think that, Drew Lock, I think it's kind of time for him to have a good game. I think he knows that. And against a youngish Carolina defense, I think that's a good time to, step up for him. So I think that Denver will be able to just outscore Carolina.
I'm gonna have to disagree with you. I think Carolina's gonna win this one, and Carolina's coming off a bye, and that's pretty much the only reason why I picked them. CMC is coming back, so that's also a huge factor. Denver is coming off a very close, surprisingly close game against Kansas City, and before the bye, Carolina was I think they were 1-2 in the 3 games before the bye, which isn't bad when you consider that they had PJ Walker, a backup quarterback, for 5-ish quarters, because he played the last quarter against Tampa Bay and then played the game against I can't remember who it was, but he played the game after that, and they ended up winning that game, and they lost in the last seconds to Minnesota with Teddy Bridgewater back. I think that could have easily turned into 2-1, just as well as it could have been 1-2. So, and we've talked about it multiple times, but I just can't. I don't think Drew Lock is trustworthy enough, and I don't feel comfortable picking him to win a game that he should win. And I don't think he'll prove that again this week.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I can't disagree with you on the lock take. You just don't really know what to expect from him, I guess. But next is Dallas versus Cincinnati, and I have Dallas. I think this is a game where, both teams are so bad the game could be like good and competitive. And I just Andy Dalton has been playing, pretty decently as the backup. Zeke has looked like he's kind of started to play, not really up to his potential, but like better, I guess, than he was in the beginning of the year when he was having the fumbling troubles. And yeah, I just think that their offense is going to be able to move against Cincinnati's pretty bad defense. And, without Joe Burrow, I think Cincinnati is just not, I don't think they're a competitive team who's going to be able to beat Dallas.
Yeah, I think this game will be very good because of how bad it is. There's 2 backup QBs and Andy Dalton and Ryan. Is it Ryan? No, it's not Ryan Finley. It's Brandon Allen or something, right?
Yeah.
And it's pretty much a pointless game for both teams. I mean, at least on the Bengals side, it is. Dallas still technically has a chance to make the playoffs. But we've mentioned in previous episodes that Cincy should just stop winning. And I agree with that. And this is a game that they should lose because Dallas is not very good. But I think the Cowboys are just so bad that they're going to end up winning on accident. And yeah, that's pretty much it. That's pretty much it. So I'm going to take Cincinnati here.
Yeah. Next is Tennessee Jacksonville. Tennessee obviously had the disappointing loss against the Browns last week, and Jacksonville seems to always keep it competitive. They never really get blown out, but I just think that Tennessee is going to win, or they don't get blown out that often. But yeah, I have Tennessee. I think that Jacksonville does not have the personnel on defense to stop Henry or Tannehill when he's having a good day. And I do think that Jacksonville will be able to score at a decent pace, but I just think that Tennessee will definitely outpace them.
Yeah, I feel like I say it every week, but that Jacksonville is like the team that they're the team that'll will be the upset of the week, and I've never actually picked them. And this is the same situation where it's a potential upset, but I don't think it will happen. I have Tennessee. You mentioned they're coming off the tough loss to Cleveland, but they did, like I mentioned earlier, they did almost come back from that, and yeah, Jacksonville has statistically the worst defense in the league. In case you forgot, Derrick Henry is one of the best, if not the best, running back in the league. And yes, he plays for Tennessee, and I think he should run all over Jacksonville's young front seven, and that'll lead to an easy Titans win.
Yeah. Yeah, he's fantastic. But then next we have the Chiefs versus the Dolphins, and I think that like skill set or like players wise, Miami should lose, and I am picking the Chiefs, but I do think this is kind of like a not exactly a trap game because Miami is is pretty much a playoff team, but I feel like it's still a game that the Chiefs might overlook a little bit. Like I think that the Miami's I think second in the league scoring defense matches up pretty well, and I think that I think that if Fitzpatrick were the starter, I wonder if that might make me slightly might make me think about picking Miami because I think that Tua is very safe and he's accurate and can move the ball fairly well, but he just can't fill the stat sheet or fill the scoreboard. He can't score a lot to keep up, or at least so far from what we've seen, he can't do that. And so that's why I'm definitely staying with the pick of Kansas City.
Yeah, I think this game is going to be very close, like uncomfortably close for Chiefs fans, and it's probably, in my opinion, the game of the week. Me and Pittsburgh Buffalo could be very easily the game of the week as well. Both teams are coming off of tight wins, and they both shouldn't have been as tight as they were. And it should be expected that Casey's defense should shut down Tua and the rest of the Dolphins' offense, but I don't think that's going to happen. I have a stat prediction for Tua. I think he posts 200 plus yards and 3+ touchdowns against KC, but I don't think that's going to be enough, and I think Casey's going to win by 6 or less.
Yeah, I definitely agree that is one of the games of the week. But next is the Giants versus the Cardinals. The Cardinals, I believe, are on a 3-game losing streak. 4-game losing streak, yeah. 4-game losing streak. And, I feel like ever since the Hail Murray and the let Russ cook stuff, both of those QBs have just kind of, ended. They've really just let Patrick Mahomes and Aaron Rodgers get out quite a few steps in front of them. And I do still have Arizona on this. The Giants, I think, are on a 4-game win streak and are probably the best team, it's a toss-up between them and Washington for the best team of the NFC East. Sorry, the NFC East. And I just still, if they win this game, I think they are the best team in the NFC East, and I think that Joe Judge is doing something for them to play well, and I just don't understand why they're winning at this point with the talent they have on the field, and obviously being the Seahawks last week. So I have Arizona, but I think the Giants are legit if they win.
Yeah, I did see something a while, probably a few days ago, that we've talked so much crap against the NFCs and how bad they are, but now they have a chance to put 2 teams into the playoffs because both the Giants and the football team are both just 2 games away from the 7th wildcard spot, which would kind of be funny. I think that would be funny to see after everything we've talked, everything we said about them. But back to the game, I think this one is a lot tougher than it should be because Arizona has lost 4 of its last 5, and they've been four in a row, and Kyler's MVP hopes and Arizona's playoff chances have kind of are slowly disappearing. And on the other side, New York has won 4 of its last 5, including beating the Seahawks, like you mentioned. So the logical pick for me would be New York, but I'm gonna go with Arizona. And this is a must-win game if they want a shot at making the playoffs, and it's against on paper a worse team. And this is because they're if you look on paper, New York's the worst team, so Arizona should win this game. I think Kyler Murray should see that, and he should be able to light him up, and it should be a big win for Arizona. But after the last 4 or 5 weeks, it's been kind of who knows what's going to happen.
Yeah. And then next, it's Houston versus Chicago. Chicago started off 5-0, I believe, and then has lost
5-1.
Just been losing since then. But I actually have Chicago in this game because Houston has one of the worst run defenses in the league, and Montgomery had a great week last week, and I think that he's gonna carry the rock against Houston. I think he's gonna play well, and I think that Trubisky's not gonna turn it over a lot, and Houston really just everything rides on Deshaun Watson's shoulders. And although I do think he will play great, I don't think he can play like the MVP-esque Watson that we saw for like 2 or 3 weeks around Thanksgiving against Chicago's stout defense. And yeah, I think that Chicago will just be able to outscore Houston.
Yeah, I can definitely see that happening. Both teams are coming off losses, and in Chicago's case, it's 6. I think they're sitting at 5-7 right now. And Houston this year at least has played very well against teams that are under 500. And I think Deshaun Watson should be able to lead the Texans to a win here. And like you kind of mentioned it already, and that like Chicago has not been able to get anything going since they started out 5-1, and I don't think they're going to be able to start up again. And maybe they get 1 or 2 more wins the rest of the season. I don't quite know off the top of my head their next 4 games, but I'm gonna give Houston the win here.
Yeah, and I do think that this is kind of a toss-up game, so I agree that Houston definitely could win. But next is Indianapolis versus Vegas. I have Indianapolis. I think that Vegas has really... I think the Raiders have really kind of fallen off of a cliff since they kept that last Kansas City game close. I think that, Waller has been fantastic. Jacobs, although I do think a lot of people might have expected a little bit more of him this year, has built off of his rookie year and played pretty well. Obviously they had a very close competitive game against the Jets, which is not good for a team with playoff hopes. And I think that Indianapolis's defense will just kind of be able to stifle their run game, and they'll have to rely on Derek Carr. And I think that although I do think he is underrated, I don't think he's that kind of guy that you can really rely on. And so, yeah, I just have Indianapolis winning mostly because of their defense.
Yeah, and like 3 weeks ago, this would have been one of the harder picks of the week, but now it's not, and at least it shouldn't be. Vegas, like you mentioned, they're coming off a 37-point loss to Atlanta in Week 12, and then a last-second 3-point win, which should be impressive until you realize it was against the Jets, and they almost lost that game. And to me, the craziest part about all of this is that they were the same team that kept it within 4 with Kansas City just 3 weeks ago. And Kansas City is obviously arguably one of the best teams in the league, and they definitely are making the case for the best. And I don't think this should be a close game. And I think Indy will take this, and it's a huge win for them, and they'll stay within a game of Tennessee.
Yeah. So now it's your
Yeah. All
games.
right. So starting off, we got the Jets taking on Seattle, and is this a no-brainer? No, I honestly don't think it is. And Seattle, as we've mentioned before, they just lost to the Jets' New York counterpart in the Giants, and 99.9% of me is picking Seattle without question. But the other 0.1% is saying that you're going to be crying on Sunday afternoon. And yeah, but I think the 99.9% of me what is making this pick, but Seattle will win by a 17-point margin at least.
Yeah. I have to pick the Seahawks, and I just think that the Jets. I If they do win this, obviously I probably will cry, but I think that the Seahawks, their pass rush has been pretty good lately. I think now the blame for the defense has fallen to the secondary, and I still just think that the Seahawks offense, I wonder. Russell Wilson hopefully will have a good game against one of, in my opinion, the league's worst defenses in the Jets. You know, I yeah, I think that the Seahawks defense will be able to slow the Jets down and move on the Jets defense. So I just think that it's logical, I guess, to pick the Seahawks.
Yeah, and real quick, I just realized that I completely skipped over the Minnesota Tampa Bay game. So if you want to do Minnesota Tampa Bay, real quick.
So I would pick Tampa Bay for that. I think that Minnesota is, they've been making a playoff push, but I think that still, Tampa Bay coming off a bye. Brady is famously good off of a bye, and I think that they're both good playoff teams, but I would say Tampa Bay is in a little bit different of a tier as a team right now from Minnesota. They're a little bit more, skilled, and they play well on both sides of the ball, whereas Minnesota does not have a great defense right now, and I really think their offense has been what's carrying them to their record right now.
Yeah, I think this is an easy one. I don't think a Tom Brady led team will lose 3 games in a row, and it's Tampa Bay is, I think, clearly the better team. And again, at least I hate to bring up the on paper part of it, but at least on paper they are. And I think, yeah, I think this is definitely an easy one. I'm gonna take Tampa. And all right, so moving on, we got Green Bay and Detroit. I have Green Bay, and I feel like every time we talk about a Green Bay Packers, every time we do a Green Bay Packers game, we have to mention that cycle that they have, and that may apply here. Is if you can remember in week 2 against Detroit, it looked like we could be in store for a huge upset, at least in the first quarter. Um, the question for me is, did they break the cycle last week against Philly, because that was the game that they would lose, like statistically, or not statistically, like based on the cycle, that's the game they would lose. And I think, yes, they broke the cycle. Will it come back? I don't think so, and I think Green Bay is going to win this game.
Yeah, I'd agree they're going to win the game. Obviously, Matt Stafford had like a Player of the Week caliber game last week, but
Yeah, if we did top 5, he'd probably be in that. He'd probably be in there.
yeah, I just looking at it though, you have to see that Green Bay is much more skilled and well-rounded as well, because Detroit, just their defense is not it. Again, on paper, Detroit's defense should be pretty good, but it's not.
Yeah.
They don't play very well in practice when you watch them. But yeah, I think that Green Bay is one of the best teams in the league right now, and Detroit is nowhere near that.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And like something I think we forgot to bring up is that Matt Patricia's gone. They fired Matt Patricia. And that is a step in the right direction, and I think that helped out last week against Chicago. So who knows? We could be in store for a huge upset again in a year, but I just don't think so. Moving on, we got Atlanta and facing off against LA, and I have Atlanta. The Chargers they took what felt like, for me at least, was their first real loss of the season, like, what I mean by real loss is like that was the first loss that I felt like, okay, going into halftime, it was like 28-0. This is a game, like, we're not winning this game. And like they've been able to keep it close throughout the year, and they've never really had that real loss feeling, I guess. I think it's only going to go downhill from here. Like they've been officially eliminated from playoff contention, so I think they should sit Justin Herbert. I think they should go back to Taylor, give Taylor a chance, because he was unfortunately taken out of playing this year because of an accidental injury that happened while trying to get a shot. So I think if they go back to Taylor, I don't think it's going to make it an easier win, but I think Atlanta should still get it done.
So yeah, I agree that Atlanta is probably going to win, but I don't agree with sitting Herbert. He's played fantastic this year, and I think that you keep him in for the development. I think that really this year, I think they can look to the future now. Obviously, that you said they're not in the playoff contention anymore, and I think that they look to draft and to develop the young, great players that they have right now. But, I see Atlanta winning. Atlanta's been kind of sneaky good lately. But, I think that the Chargers shouldn't sit Herbert, in my opinion, just so he has like more game experience, which is always good for your franchise QB.
Yeah, I get what you're saying with the experience part of it. My thing is like you never want to risk him getting hurt, and that would just, because he has played very well, and I think he's definitely going to be their franchise guy, at least based off this year. I think it could go either way, but since you're already out of playoff contention, like, you really have nothing to play for at this point except for pride. So why not play it safe, and because Tyrod Taylor is not just as good, but he's still a good quarterback and could probably start in a few other places right now. So yeah, that's just my take on it. That's why I want them to sit Herbert, because I like Herbert, and I don't want him to get hurt and end up losing his career because of one injury that happened in a meaningless game.
Yeah.
All right, so New Orleans and Philly. This one should be an easy one. I have New Orleans. Drew Brees is expected to play, which just makes this an even easier pick for me. And with Taysom Hill at the helm, I still would have picked New Orleans. He's done a hell of a job as a QB in the past 3 weeks. And even though they were against lesser teams, they played Atlanta twice and Denver, who also didn't have a QB. They were playing with a practice squad receiver as a quarterback. So I'm going to take New Orleans. And on the Philly side, as we mentioned earlier, Jalen Hurts is finally going to get the start for Philly, and he looked. I think it was about time, and he played well in the last quarter and a half or whatever it was against Green Bay last week, and that may close the gap just a tiny bit, but I don't think it's going to do much, and I still think New Orleans should get an easy win, and that win will clinch the NFC South.
Yeah, I agree. I think New Orleans is one of the better teams in football right now. If Breeze plays, that makes it all the more likely that they'll win. And I don't know much about the broken rib recovery time, but I'm pretty sure that's a pretty impressive recovery time for that.
I think on average it's like 6 to 8 weeks. I want to say, but I'm not a doctor. Like I don't know. I don't know. That's just my guess.
Yeah, I yeah. So he's back. Obviously Michael Thomas has been looking a little bit better lately than he did after the injury and then suspension for a little bit for fighting, or not suspension, just they sat him, I think.
Yeah. Well, the team suspended him. The team suspended him.
Yeah. Yeah, I think Philly is weirdly might be the worst team in the NFC East right now. I don't know. It's between them and Dallas, which I think if you asked me at least at the beginning of the season, I would think it would have been flip-flopped. But yeah, I just think that the Saints are on a completely different level from the Eagles.
Yeah, I just want to. I think in our very first episode, we did a season preview, and we both thought that if I remember right, I think that we both thought the NFC East wasn't going to be good. I think the best record was 10-6, but I don't think anyone thought it was going to be this bad. So yeah, that's just fun. And then for the next one, we got another NFC East team. Washington and San Fran, and I have 3 words for this, and that's all. This is all I'm going to say. Washington football team.
Nice. All right. So I'm gonna pick San Fran. I do think the Washington football team is better than most people give them credit for, and they obviously shocked the world after beating Pittsburgh. But I don't think I think that San Fran has been, has been decent recently, and I think that they beat the Rams a couple weeks back. I think that they'll be able to beat a Washington football team that, they both have pretty great defenses, but I think the run game of San Francisco will probably is what's making me lean towards San Francisco. How long is Gibson out? Have they said anything about that?
It's turf toe, so it shouldn't be long. I think probably 2 to 3 weeks.
Yeah. So, but probably not back for this game.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think if Gibson was there and they both are have fully healthy run games, I feel like it'd be very much just a toss up for me. But I think that, Terry McLaurin, as I know, because he was on my fantasy for last week, when Gibson is not in the game, you can kind of take one wide receiver. You can take Terry McLaurin out of the game and make Alex Smith throw to other people, which he can do, and he made McKissick, I think. He had a great game. So, but
Thomas as well.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't think they're. I think that San Francisco is going to end up winning because of the run game.
Yeah, and real quick, last week again we had the something happened with the recording, so we couldn't upload. But we had our editor Mark on as a guest, and he had Washington over Pittsburgh. He was the only one out of the 3 of us. I can't remember if I mentioned this already. I probably did, but yeah, he picked Washington and pretty much shocked all of us. So yeah, that's just real quick. And for Sunday Night Football, like we've mentioned this, but the game already, Pittsburgh and Buffalo. And I feel stupid for making this pick, but I'm going to take Pittsburgh, and I'm half making it because it gives me hope as a Pats fan because it gets if we can win this week, then it gets us a game closer to Buffalo. And I'm also half making it because I believe that Pittsburgh can bounce back. And Mike Tomlin, love him or hate him, is a great coach and probably the best in the league this year at least. And I think he should be able to game plan for Josh Allen, and because their Pittsburgh's defense is very good, and this is also about the time of year that Josh Allen tends to fall apart, and it's a primetime game against a good Steelers team who you could debate is better than Buffalo. I think Allen's gonna collapse, and I think Pittsburgh's gonna get a solid maybe 2-score game win.
I'm gonna pick Buffalo. I think that I feel like Pittsburgh's gonna be a little bit in shock this week. Like, if you know what I mean. I think they're not gonna be super trusting of in their own ability, and I think that Buffalo has been playing great lately. I think that it's not Josh Allen's not going to collapse yet. I don't see him having a week like last week, but I don't. He'll probably throw for like 2 touchdowns, like 250 yards, something kind of average, but still like not obviously not like collapse worthy. And yeah, I just think Buffalo right now for me might be definitely like a top 5 team. I think that the Steelers, I guess, revealed a lot of weaknesses last week, and I think that it's going to be a good close game. In my opinion, it's game of the week, but I think that the Bills are going to end up winning.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. This was a tough one for me because I kept flipping back and forth, and it was like Pittsburgh just came off a loss to Washington, and Buffalo came off a solid win against San Fran. So that was I kind of picked it. Like I said, I half made it because it gives me hope, and half because I believe they can bounce back. And then moving on to Monday Night Football, this should be the last game of the week, assuming there's no COVID delays. I'm gonna take Baltimore, and Lamar Jackson's back, and he's played very well. Another probably top 5 guy for our top 5 players if we were to do top 5. Yeah, Cleveland, they had a great game, especially in the first half against Tennessee last week, and they were able to lock down Derrick Henry. But Lamar is he's a whole different player. He's a great runner. He's more agile, and in week 1, the Browns lost 38-6, and Lamar torched them for 275 pass yards and 3 passing touchdowns. He also had 45 rushing yards, and I think we see a repeat of that this week. But I think Cleveland will put up a lot more than just 6 points, and they'll keep it closer. And then again to the Ravens side, this is a must-win game, and we're going to talk about the Ravens in the playoffs later, but it's a must-win. They have to win this game if they want to keep their playoff hopes alive.
Yeah, I agree. I think that Baltimore is going to get the win. I think that Baltimore's run game has been fantastic lately. I think that it's going to be a high-scoring, close game, a great, divisional battle. I agree Baltimore has to win this if they want to keep their playoff hopes alive. I think that really so far, they were playing pretty well. And then over the past couple weeks before their win against Dallas, they've been kind of disappointing for most people. And I think that, I feel like they know that, and they're going to step it up here. Lamar Jackson played fantastic work on this Wednesday, so last night. And I think that, I think he's back in his form right now. Like he's playing like he was, maybe not at the peak of his MVP performance last year. Not quite that well, but he's playing about as well as he did like on average last year, I'd say, like in an average game. And I think that, yeah, Baltimore is just, in my opinion, the better team. And I think they're going to be able to beat Cleveland. So,
yeah. Now we're going to move on to questions. I don't know, Matthias, if you want to start or if I start, doesn't matter.
All right, yeah, I'll start. My question was that a fluke game for the Giants?
That's a tough one because I think they played well, but what do you mean by fluke game? Like, do you think like if it were to happen again next week, would the results change? Is that what you mean, or?
I mean, like, do you think they're actually a team on par, I guess, with the Seahawks? Like, I guess that question also depends on what you think of the Seahawks, but yeah.
The Seahawks are a good team, and in my opinion, they're kind of somewhat similar to the Patriots, and with like they get your hopes up, and then they'll lose to a lesser team, and that was kind of the game. So I think if that's what you mean by fluke, then yes, this was a fluke game. I think Seattle should have easily beaten the Giants, but you gotta give credit where credit's due, and I think New York, they played a great game, and yeah, so to answer your question, yes, that was a fluke game.
Yeah, so I think that the Giants are. I don't think, like, I'm gonna give a weird answer. I think it was like kind of half fluke, half not, because I don't think they're like. I think in any other division, they're obviously not a playoff team, or like record wise, and I think that but I do think that they are better than most people think. I think that Joe Judge has definitely shown this year that right now, with the personnel he has, he can win, more games than I expected. I feel like I expected them to be one of the worst teams in the league, and but barring like Daniel Jones having like an MVP like season or something like that. But I think that he's definitely Joe Judge is their guy for right now, and I think that yeah. So I think it was like semi fluke sort of.
Yeah. All right. My question is, if the Steelers and Chiefs were to meet in the playoffs, let's just assume it's the AFC Championship game. It's in Pittsburgh. Who would win and by how much?
So I would have the Chiefs by around 14. And I think that, their offense is more dynamic. I trust the skill and the experience that Patrick Mahomes got from last year's playoff run. And I just think that the Steelers' defense is elite, but Bud Dupree got injured, who I think is a very underrated edge rusher on the team, who gets overshadowed because of TJ Watt and Cameron Hayward. And I think that the Steelers wide receivers are one of their strengths, but lately they've been having drop problems, and Chase Claypool has not been amazing as he was in the beginning of the season. And I just think that the Chiefs defense can keep up with some of the elite offenses in the league. And whenever you have a team backed by the prime Patrick Mahomes that we're seeing right now, I think that they are almost always going to be favorites, just because of that. And I think that, with someone like him, like we've seen the past couple of years with like Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers and, Peyton Manning, it's tough to bet against a guy like him who just is the best player in the league. So,
yeah, I'm gonna have to agree with you. I think like this is kind of a weird one because I'm kind of going back and forth. But I think KC would win probably by six, seven, maybe, or something around there. And yeah, I just like assuming they both teams went out. Um, the Pittsburgh would have um, the tiebreaker because they have a better conference record. So it would be played at Heinz Field, and that kind of if it was in Arrowhead, then I think it would be 14, maybe even 20 because the Chiefs fans are loud and they have fans this year. So I'm gonna have to go with Chiefs by around 7.
Yeah. So my next question is: can Baker Mayfield, not this year but just in his career, win a Super Bowl on the Browns?
That's another tough one because they have the talent to do it, and kind like I don't know. Like they are a very good team. They have what do they have? They have OBJ, Jarvis Landry, Kareem Hunt, Nick Chubb, and Myles Garrett on the defensive end. I think in his career, yeah, yes, but the Browns coaches have not been great in the past, and I think Kevin Stefanski's really kind of turned that around, and he's obviously as they're 9-3 9-3 right now. So I'm gonna say yeah. If, in his career, yes, I think the Browns can win a Super Bowl. Or
Yeah,
Baker Mayfield can.
I was mostly thinking about like him from a talent perspective because like I feel like the last time a Super Bowl winning QB was like, oh, well, that guy doesn't seem like he's like a top tier QB who should be, winning a Super Bowl. I mean, some people might say Russell Wilson because back then he was, he was carried by their defense. He was a system QB. But I think that seeing what he can do now, you have to go back to Joe Flacco, and I think he just had an elite team around him. And I agree that if they can surround him like that, I agree that he can just play it safe and, just be, carried up through the playoffs. But I think that he himself, like, I'm not totally sure if I am ever completely going to trust him to be that guy that I am like, yeah, I think he's going to win the Super Bowl because he's great. And, it's not just because he has like the best wide receiver core in the league or something like that, or like the best defense or something.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with everything you just said. I think from a talent perspective, no. Like if it was just him and he was on, say the Giants, they don't really have much of a receiving core. So yeah, say he's on the Giants. No, I don't think they're going to win a Super Bowl. But from his team now, in 4 or 5 years, I think there's definitely a chance that the Browns will win a Super Bowl in the next 4 or 5 years. There's a chance. I don't think it will happen, but who knows? It's the NFL. There are crazier things can happen.
Yeah.
All right. My last question is: do you think the Ravens can still make the playoffs?
I think that they can. I think, like I'm pretty sure we mentioned earlier, I think Lamar is kind of back because with COVID, you can have it for about a week and be asymptomatic, and it can be like not picked up on tests, I'm pretty sure. And what if he had that for like a week or two and he had that affecting him? We didn't know it, and that's why he just didn't really quite look like himself before he was really diagnosed with it. And, he had, he ran great against the Cowboys last night. I think that, definitely his throwing is, he's still like, it's still sometimes like, I think the announcer said last night, he waits to see a receiver open before he throws them open, which the elite QBs do. But the elite throwing QBs do. He's an elite QB, but you have to factor in his running. And so, yeah, I think that he's back to form, per se, I guess. And I think that he, along with the Ravens defense and Dobbins, who has been looking like their best running back right now, I think that they are going to push for the playoffs and maybe win out to get there. I would think.
Yeah. I'm looking at the schedules now, and the Ravens have a pretty easy schedule, and I'm just doing like the three AFC North teams that have a chance. The Browns have the Ravens, Giants, Jets, and Steelers, which is like 2-2. Maybe you throw in the loss to the Giants, which was about 1-3, which is like 10-6. But the Ravens, on the other hand, they have the Browns, Jaguars, Giants, and Bengals, which I think they should win all four of those games. And then the Steelers will probably finish out 2-2 as well, which would put them at second in the AFC North, and that should be enough for a playoff spot. But that it all, like you mentioned, it all really comes down to Lamar, and if he can play like he played last night, even though it was against a lesser team in Dallas, but he still played very well, and if he can get back to his MVP self, then we're in for we're going to be in for a treat in the playoffs if Baltimore can make something happen.
Yeah.
All right, so I think that's it for questions. We got our last segment, I guess we'll call it, is we're going to do our Super Bowl predictions, and in the past we've done two of these, and we have had the exact same Super Bowl for the past two times, so I don't think it'll be this way this time, but you never know. So if you want to start off with your Super Bowl.
Yeah, so I have the Chiefs and the Saints. The Chiefs, I think, are the best team in the NFL right now. And I don't see them getting beaten in the playoffs. The Saints, I think, that is definitely the team I'm more up to. I do think they could get beaten in the NFC, and they always seem to lose off of something crazy, or at least for the past couple of years.
And it's normal for the Vikings.
Yeah. So, I mean, maybe the Vikings won't make the playoffs, and we'll finally see what they can do. But I think that the Saints, Drew Brees is back now. I think that just how they played without him there, with Taysom Hill, shows that with him there, I think that they already were contenders with a backup QB, and I think with their starting guy who has, an amazing amount of experience and is still, pretty accurate and elite, at least over short distance, I think that he will just lead them through the playoffs. And then I think that, once you actually get to the Super Bowl matchup, I think that the Saints actually match up pretty well with the Chiefs. I think that would be a good game.
Okay. So I feel stupid with my prediction as I did last week. It's pretty much the same thing. You guys didn't hear it yet, but Matthias has. It's a rematch of Super Bowl 45. It's going to be Packers and Steelers. And I know how much we talk about the Steelers, how bad, they're not, they shouldn't be the one seed in the AFC, which they shouldn't, and I don't think they I don't think they should be, but they are. And in the rematch, I have the Steelers winning, and I talk about that underdog mentality, and I hate to bring it up, but it's the only example I can really think of is the Titans last year. And it's normally, that underdog mentality is normally given to a wild card team, and there's only been one, underdog that's been a 1 seed before, and it was the Eagles in 2017, I believe. And, that underdog mentality I'm talking about, it's like a team we overlook. Like, we don't expect them to do anything. They're a one and done. Like, they're just kind of there to be there. And to me, it's what if it's not a wild card team, and what if the team we overlook ends up being the best team in the league based off record and tiebreakers and such, and that would be the Steelers. And I know you're probably thinking I'm crazy, and I agree, I probably am crazy, but that's my prediction, and I'm going to be confident with this until the Steelers end up 11-5 and lose the next 4 games. But I don't think that's going to happen. But now, in 4 weeks, we're going to do this again, looking into playoffs. We'll have the 7 teams locked in, and if the Steelers are 11-5, then my whole outlook on this entire prediction will change. Or if the Chiefs are 15-1. So, yeah, I say I'm confident. I'm not really that confident, but just kind of throwing it out there. And then on the Packers side, we've mentioned before, they're probably top 3 team in the NFC. And yeah, I think they're the only team that can beat the Saints in the NFC, except maybe the Buccaneers, because Tom Brady in the playoffs is scary. And that if we can get a Bucs Saints matchup in the NFC Championship, I'd be happy. But my Super Bowl 55 prediction is going to be Packers versus Steelers, and the Steelers are going to win.
Yeah, I forgot to give a winner of mine. I think at this point I would stay with the Chiefs and probably just say them. I feel like right now in any matchup the Chiefs are the safest bet, I feel like. So, yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that's it, unless you have anything else you want to say.
No, I'm good.
All right. So, next week, we will be here. Hopefully, we have a guest, and it'll probably be Mark. We'll have some other stuff mixed in, because we won't have a Super Bowl prediction because, well, it would be weird to do it 2 weeks in a row. And yeah, so we're pretty much that's it. We're gonna have hopefully a guest next week, and yeah, we'll see you guys next week, and hopefully that this is even uploaded and you guys are even listening. But thank you guys for listening. If you're watching on YouTube, thank you. And yeah, we'll see you guys next week.
Thank you.